Again, my name is Justin McBride. I am a program manager here at DrugFreeAZKids.org. We are a program of Southwest Behavioral and Health Services, and we do a ton of different programming, like the webinars I'm bringing you today. We do one-time presentations for parents and community members about strategies for preventing substance abuse and risky behavior. We also deliver a curriculum called Active Parenting, which is a 6-week-long series that we go out into schools and churches and community groups and talk about instilling positive qualities of character in our kids, like communication, cooperation, high self-esteem, problem solving, and a number of other things that we talk about in the Active Parenting workshop, all with the end goal of helping raise kids who are able to deal with life's challenges and hopefully avoid making risky decisions such as violence, drugs, alcohol, and the list goes on. Today's webinar, we are going to focus on understanding the teen brain. I'm really excited to talk about this because typically I'll hint to a little bit of what we're going to talk about on all of the slides today throughout the webinars we have each month, but I don't really get to package it all together and just look at the teen brain. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to talk about the teen brain. As you guys have already found, there is a chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen or right-hand corner. Some of you I see are logging in from a mobile device. You may have to toggle on the menu between chat, video, and the presentation, depending on what type of mobile device you're on. Feel free, though, to use that chat box to ask me any questions, ask me to maybe clarify something. If I jump over it too quickly, I'm happy to answer those questions. If I don't get to it right away, don't worry. I'll make sure to get to all the questions that I can at the end of the webinar. I'll do my best to get us out of here on time. We might go maybe a few minutes over just because of the technical difficulties, but I expect to have the meat and potatoes of this webinar done by about 12:30, and I will leave as much time after that as we need to answer questions and discuss anything that we have left on the table at that point. So before we get started, real briefly about me. Again, I'm a program manager here at DrugFreeAZKids.org. I do a little bit of everything when it comes to the programs that we deliver, and it's really exciting to be able to talk to parents, to talk to educators, law enforcement, young people about making positive, healthy decisions. It's something that I've been doing here at DrugFreeAZKids.org prior to this at the Boys and Girls Club and also at Arizona SAD. It's something that's a really big passion of mine, and I'm happy to be able to join you guys here today. So today's webinar, these are the 3 things that I really want to tackle, the 3 main points, and that is teen brain development in general, what's going on, maybe a refresher for some of us, or something brand new if we've never seen it, and then talking a little bit about risky behavior that is associated with that brain development and what's going on, why is that behavior occurring in the first place, what are some of those goals of teen behavior, and then what can we do? What do we do with all this information? That's the important part. We can always learn more, we can watch documentaries, we can go to school, and we can get tons of knowledge, but what are some ways that we can take all that knowledge and hopefully make a positive difference in our community and in the lives of young people? All right, so let's get into teen brain development. I know that we've all said this at some point in our lives, and when we were a teenager, we probably got annoyed when people would, say things about, oh, what's with those teens, or oh, they just don't understand me, they don't get it. But now most of us in this room are probably a little bit beyond our teen years, some more than others, and I find myself saying this all the time, like, what are they thinking? What are they doing? Luckily, I have a little more patience now, and because of the work I do, I can kind of take a step back and say, all right, what is going on inside that brain? Too often we say things like, act your age, but what we really mean is act like an actual adult who has a fully developed brain and has the experiences that we have to make sound decisions. Because if they're truly acting their age, they're probably still going to be annoying us from time to time. Again, some more than others. So here are some just pictures, just to kind of jog our memory of, in case you're having trouble thinking about what some of the odd things teens do that we can struggle with as adults, whether it's parents, teachers, educators of any kind. I mean, whether it's risky decisions, being lazy as we see it, sleeping all the time, maybe looking at us like we're aliens, as we're staring at them like they're aliens, like, who are you and what have you done with my children, right? So teens, there's a lot going on for teens, and there's a reason for that, and it's this thing right here called their brain. And as we look at brain development, it's important to remember that just because the brain itself in here is about 95% of its actual size that it will be early on in the elementary years, really before they're, by the time they're in first and second grade, their brain is about 95% of its size that it's going to be for life. That doesn't mean, however, that the brain is fully ready to go and everything's in place. It just means that in those younger years, the size is there. Think of it like a house that has been built, yet there's not all the furniture in there. Some rooms are a little bit more bare than other rooms. We're still connecting some of that plumbing, some of the electric work, some of the air conditioning. All those different things that we're going to put in a home aren't quite there yet. So it's just like a big open warehouse that we're putting more and more into. So the human brain is not actually completely developed until around the age of 25. In the mid-20s, it's going to vary from person to person. Men, it's going to come a little bit later, and I know all the ladies watching right now are saying a lot later. But in general, it does tend to be in the mid-20s when the brain is fully developed. And again, it just because the brain, once it gets to 100% of its size, doesn't mean it just stops developing, obviously. It just means that the different parts of the brain are fully developed, and we can start processing things in a different way, utilizing those different parts of the brain. Now, taking a look at the teen brain, at the adolescent brain, it's going to develop, kind of think of it from from back to front. Now, starting off with our cerebellum, this is the part back here. That's one of the very first things to develop. That helps us with things like coordination, physical coordination. And you can see that with little kids. Just think of as a kid gets older and some of the challenges and some of the milestones that they reach as they get older. Well, that cerebellum is helping us with some of those first milestones as they become better at walking and running and all the things that they're going to do in teenagers. Think about some of the physical feats that teenagers are able to do when it comes to athletics especially. Just because other parts of the brain aren't fully developed, that physical coordination is really in overdrive by the time they get to the teen years. There's still some, obviously, development to go there, but that's one of the first places part of the brain to develop. Then we're going to move on to the, if it shows up for us. All right, well, it skipped over the second one, so we'll do two in one here. So the second one, so after the cerebellum, that goes to the nucleus accumbens. And that is the part of the brain that's going to help out with things like motivation. And don't get confused with the type of motivation that we typically think of when we hear motivation, like, oh, I'm motivated to do good. I'm motivated to go out there and get the job done. I'm motivated to be a better person. Not that. We think of motivation as a positive thing, which it is. Most things in life can be positive or negative. But the motivation we're talking about here is just motivation to do things, motivation to go climb that tree, motivation to build a fort, motivation just to do stuff, just to get out there. That's why we see younger kids really just motivated to do things. And it seems like they're always so busy and they're always so energetic. That's because as we go with the different parts of brain development, that's where they're at now. Now that they've learned to walk and run and do all these other things and physical coordination, when they're babies, they're picking up things, they're picking up cups and they're picking up pins and they're putting them in their mouth and they're touching everything and they're learning what all of these different things are. Now that they're starting to learn what they are, now they want to start using all of these, this new knowledge that they have, and they're motivated to go do things. And that's really exciting. And sometimes it can be frustrating, especially when we're trying to keep an eye on them. I know for a lot of parents out there, it's one of those things when they're really young and they're not walking yet and really excited to see them take that first step. And then within a few weeks, it's like, oh my gosh, can they just go back to crawling? Because now that they're walking and running around, it's harder to keep track of them, right? And then especially as they get older and they're motivated to go do more things and climb those trees and sometimes engage in riskier behavior, it can be scary for us as adults. Now, looking beyond that a little bit, now we're looking at the amygdala. And here, just so as we're looking at the brain, this isn't meant to be an anatomy lesson of the brain. Exactly where these markers are not 100% on point. So if you are a biologist or a scientist in the room, I apologize if I'm off a few millimeters. But generally, we're going from front to back. So in different sides of the brain as well. But looking at the amygdala is going to help with things like emotion. Emotion, and that's not necessarily controlling emotion, just the ability to access some of those emotions. By the time teenagers, or by the time kids hit their teenage years, they have a pretty good grasp of emotions. Not really how to handle them. That's a whole nother deal, and we'll talk about that in a second. But think for a moment about a teenage boy or a teenage girl that maybe falls in love, right? They fall in love for the first time or the second time or the 8th time, whatever it happens to be, right? Just innocent, puppy love maybe. And then all of a sudden they break up, right? After their long-term relationship that lasted from second period all the way till the end of the day when they were getting on the bus to go home. And then little Susie goes up to Johnny and says, hey, I think we're done, right? So that was a, maybe 4 or 5 hour relationship. For us as adults, we don't even really take those types of relationships all that seriously. If that was to happen, if somebody broke up with us after about 4 or 5 hours, we'd be like, okay, bye. But in the brain of a young person, they're not necessarily able to regulate all those emotions, but the emotions are definitely there. So that's where we see outbursts a lot of times, right? And they're heartbroken and their life is over and I'm never going to fall in love again until the next day when I get to school again or the next week. And obviously my time frame's a little exaggerated. Some of you are probably out there saying, nope, that's my kid right there. And some more than others, accessing those emotions is going to be different and avoiding the emotions as well. And we'll get into that here in a little bit as well. So the emotions are there, but the ability to regulate them definitely not fully developed yet. That's why we get a lot of those outbursts. I hate you. I'm never talking to you again. And then maybe 10 minutes later, they're sitting there on our lap or they're coming in and talking like nothing really happened. And that's because that amygdala in here is ready to go. However, we're missing one key component. Think of this as like a car now. We started out with the wheels. We have the wheels on this car. Now we're starting to add other components to the car that help us go faster. We're adding the engines into the car. We're adding our radiators. We're adding all of these different things. We're adding stereo. And then we're ready to go, right? It's a Ferrari. We can go a million miles an hour now. However, we're missing one key component, the steering wheel. Anybody who's ever driven a Ferrari or driven any car over 10 miles an hour knows you need a steering wheel, right? Otherwise, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. Well, that steering wheel is right here. That's what I like to call it. And that is going to be our prefrontal cortex. That is the last part of the brain to develop. And that is around the age of 25, like I talked about before. So when teens graduate from high school and, we say, oh, they're 18, they're ready to enter the world, well, their brain's still not even fully developed. That prefrontal cortex, the executive center of the brain, or the steering wheel, as I like to call it, is going to help with sound decision-making, empathy, considering consequences, regulating those emotions that our amygdala has provided us with, self-awareness, morality, all of these things. I mean, that's really the executive center of the brain. It's like having a company without any leadership at the top. You can have a lot of great people doing a lot of great things, but if you don't have somebody at the top kind of pulling it all together, some type of team lead to bring all that together and let one department know that they need to talk to another department, we're going to have issues. Same with the teen brain. That executive center of the brain pulls all of these different departments going on in the brain and says, hey, amygdala, you might need to consider this. Or, hey, cerebellum, you might need to consider this first before just acting. And that's really important. We know that. And think about it. How often when we make a dumb move in life and we go, oh, what was I thinking, right? That's right there. Whether or not we're really trying to jar that prefrontal cortex and make sure that steering wheel isn't locked is another story, but that's right there. So next time you go, oh, what was I thinking? Just remember, that's your prefrontal cortex, so be nice to it. Also, in the teen years, after the prefrontal cortex, or while the prefrontal cortex is developing, something else is happening, and it's called pruning. And I found a video on YouTube that I'm going to show you that will talk a little bit about this. It's a few minutes long, and he does a really good job at explaining a number of different topics relating to everything relating to science. And I'll make sure to put all the info on accessing his videos in the follow-up email. So if you guys want to access the full video or any others, you can as well. So let's take a look at pruning in the teen brain.
The prefrontal cortex is the last to be hooked up and shaped. So it's important.
And I'll pause it for a second. As a precursor, you may need to adjust your volume a little bit. So if it's really loud or if it's really low, I'll give you guys a second to adjust that. I'm not sure how it's going to end up on your end, just depending on your volume setting.
Keep in mind that just because your favorite teenagers stayed up until sunrise binge-watching The Walking Dead the night before an exam, it doesn't mean they're dumb or lazy. Their brains are just literally finishing being built. But at the same time, because all this brain building is just starting to peak, this is also when the brain starts getting thinned out. You actually start losing connections that you don't use enough in a process called synaptic pruning, which has led to a theory that this is kind of a use it or lose it phase. Meaning, adolescence could be an especially important time to use your brain. Play an instrument, engage in sports, write poetry, learn a language. Because by doing these things, you're helping hardwire those synapses and giving your brain topiary a lovely, lasting shape. Whereas if you're sitting around all day playing Candy Crush, those will be the connections that survive, which you don't need. This shaping of the teen brain manifests itself in other ways too, like in teenage attitudes. A group of scientists at the McLean Hospital in Massachusetts once hooked up a group of adults and a group of teens to MRI devices and then asked them to identify a series of expressions on photographs of adult faces. Interestingly, while adults correctly identified one expression as fear, the teenagers thought the faces showed anger, surprise, or shock. They weren't registering subtlety as well. Not only that, but the MRI images showed that adults and teens responded with different parts of their brains. Adults used the reasonable prefrontal cortex, while the teens mostly used the gut reaction emotional amygdala located farther back in the brain. Results like these might help explain why teenagers seem to experience frequent mood swings. For one, they tend to react quickly from the emotional part of their brain without running those reactions by the more rational frontal cortex, and two, it could be that they're just misreading expressions and therefore the intentions behind them. The frontal cortex also helps people relate to and understand each other, and you can imagine what happens when concern is misjudged as anger or worry as disappointment. The Fresh Prince has an entire song about it. But the truth is, as much as parents just don't understand, teens don't always understand either. When the emotional amygdala and the more rational cortex aren't fully hooked up yet, that can make it hard for teenagers to productively work through emotions. This kind of reactionary, impulsive behavior may also lead to more risk-taking. Adolescence is the time when we're most likely mostly to experiment with whatever booze, drugs, or toad licking is available, and unfortunately, it's also the time our developing brains are most vulnerable to lasting effects. Studies have shown that teens are more likely to become addicted to drugs and alcohol than adults, partly because their brains are more attuned to their reward centers. While the teenage prefrontal cortex is still developing, their nucleus accumbens, or pleasure and reward zone, forms early on. Neuroimaging studies have shown that when presented with a big potential reward, teen brains light up way more than kids' or adults' brains. But if the reward was small, teen brains hardly fired at all. So basically, give an adolescent a pat on the back, and you'll get a shrug. Give them a hot date or a winning goal, and their brains light up like Vegas. This, of course, does not always result in great judgment. A jacked-up, thrill-seeking impulse combined with an exquisite pang of peer pressure, plus a new driver's license, new sex parts, and access to substances can lead to some not good results. But still, this long and sometimes tedious remodeling process that our bodies go through in the teenage years isn't all bad. Many scientists have pointed out that our delayed adolescence lets our brains keep their flexibility longer, which, yeah, may make teens a little slow, but also more adaptable as they prepare for the adult world. In this way, you can see teen impulsiveness as boldness or independent thinking, and moodiness as a source of newfound empathy, and excitability as passion. Which means there's a lot of awesome energy floating around out there ready to decrease all kinds of world suck. Thanks for watching this SciShow. And
all right, so this is just a quick look into part of that video. Again, I'll send you guys the entire link to the full video. I think it's about 10 to 15 minutes long that talks about the teen brain a little bit more. That's from SciShow on YouTube. Does a great job explaining a number of concepts. So now that we have a little bit better idea of what's going on with the teen brain and what's going on in there with pruning and the importance of reinforcing positive behaviors and things that we really want them to, just become more concrete in their brain, we need to make sure that they have opportunities to engage in those positive behaviors, right? And filtering out some of the more maybe negative behaviors or things that we want to stay away from. So real quick, let's take a look at risky behavior. Risky behavior, when it comes to teens, is a result of really the goals of their behavior are going to vary. So it's a result of a number of different reasons. We can't just say teens engage in risky behavior because of this or because of that, and that's really the only reason. Each teen and each situation is going to vary a little bit because there are multiple goals that teens have when it comes to making any type of decision. And those goals tend to be belonging, power, protection, withdraw, and challenge. And in trying to achieve some of these goals, a lot of times teens fall into the trap of making risky decisions. And that risky behavior is the issue. The actual goal that they're trying to achieve is not something negative. Belonging, power, protection, withdrawal, challenge. These are all positive goals. It's just how the teens will seek to achieve those goals can be the challenging part. Belonging, that we can see, look at maybe a small child. Let's think about that there. Undue attention seeking. Well, while undue attention seeking is viewed as negative, the goal of wanting to belong is definitely not negative. So for belonging, it's easier to see how this isn't so much of a negative thing. As they get into be teenagers, the goal of belonging is still there. The goal of belonging as part of their family, their peer group, their city, whatever that happens to be, and how they seek to achieve that can sometimes lead to risky behaviors. Now, some teens have more luck than other teens in different areas of achieving these goals. So some kids may be seeking to achieve these goals in a negative way for different reasons. So, well, let's say drug use, for example. A teen just wanting to experiment and try drugs isn't always going to be because they want to fit in with their friends. That could be that teen trying to achieve the goal of withdrawal. The goal of withdrawal is a healthy goal. We need to be able to do that. As adults, we understand the importance of having that ability to withdraw. Part of getting a break during our job, during our work day, isn't just to give us a physical break, it's to give us that mental break as well. That's why it's important we take those breaks. We take that lunch break. It's important that we take those vacations every now and again, that we take time to withdraw from the challenges in life and to reflect upon those and just kind of clear our head. That's okay. That's healthy. But sometimes teens may use chemicals or self-harming as a way to try to withdraw from the world. Not always going to be the case for a teen who's using a substance or who's self-harming. But that is that's one example of a goal that they could be trying to achieve. Challenge is another one. Think of that one of those first slides I showed you where the teens were they were riding on the bike, and the one who was actually steering the bike had the garbage can over his head, right? And you're like, what are they thinking? Well, something as simple as, hey, let's see how far we can go riding this bike without even looking. As silly as it seems, they're challenging themselves. In some positive ways, some negative ways, teens do that. That is true for all of the goals you see here. We don't need to try to prevent our teens from achieving these goals. It's providing healthy opportunities for them to achieve these goals throughout their day and throughout their week, throughout their life, and just staying on top of that. Because if they're having trouble achieving some of these goals, they don't have the help of that prefrontal cortex to let them know that, hey, you just need to withdraw a little bit. Or, you know what, you're just trying to challenge yourself. Why don't you go try out for a soccer team or a basketball team or that school play? They don't have that steering wheel up here to help steer them in the right way. We have that steering wheel in life, and we still know that sometimes we turn down the wrong road and we got to get back on the right path. So we have those struggles. Imagine what's going on in the brain of a teenager. So what do we do with all this information? We have a better idea of what's going on in the teen brain, how they look at different situations, the goals that they may be trying to achieve. Now what? What do we do with all? Well, we look at all of the things that are going on in their world, family, friends, school, sports, other extracurricular activities, technology, music, their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own dreams. Looking at all of these things can help give us the opportunity to provide them with those healthy opportunities. If we have a child who is really great at seeking healthy opportunities to challenge themselves, then maybe we don't need to focus on that goal as much. Now, we might need to look at other things like belonging or power or control as it relates to some of those healthy challenges that they're providing themselves to make sure they're not overdoing it. But if we notice a kid is just, always busy and they're always doing everything and they're a straight A student and they're on the basketball team and they're on the debate team, they're on student government, all these different activities going on, they're involved at church, they're involved with the family, well, maybe we need to look at the goal of withdraw a little bit. Are they having trouble finding healthy opportunities to withdraw, to decompress from all of the stressors, the pressures that are out there? So I could go on and on. We could talk about this for a week and not get through every single one of these in depth. But this is more meant to give you a sample of what's going on in the teen brain and provide you with the opportunity to think about those goals of teen behavior and look at the individual circumstance and the individual teen themselves when evaluating what might be the best method of guiding them through some of these challenging situations. It's going to be different for every teen. It's going to be different for every situation for that teen. And the more that we get better at identifying some of these and giving healthy opportunities, now we're starting to reinforce those healthy connections that we know teens really need to be making right now. As they're pruning back some of these negative behaviors, hopefully, we're providing them with those healthy opportunities so they see what you need to do when you're stressed out, what you need to do when you're just bored all the time and you don't challenge yourself. What are healthy opportunities? They start forming those connections. And it doesn't stop when they turn 18. It doesn't stop when they graduate high school necessarily. We need to continue that positive encouragement of healthy behaviors and healthy ways of dealing with those problems. But going back to let's jump ahead a little bit there. But going back to what's going on in the world of a teen and what we can do, acting as that filter for some of those different things that are going on in their world, maybe filtering out some of the negative opportunities, filtering in some of those positive opportunities that teens may not see. We can't prevent all of the influences that are out there in the world, but we can influence the way in which our teens deal with some of those challenging influences that are out there. So hopefully that helps give you a little bit of insight into what we can kind of do to better understand the teen brain. But ultimately, it comes down to having those conversations, preventing risky behavior like drug use, violence, whether that be bullying or gangs or cyberbullying, whatever that may be, reckless sexuality. Having those conversations is going to help. It's not just talking about those risks. It's also looking at the science behind it, talking to our kids about why. What is the reason behind this? The days of because I'm the dad, because I'm the mom aren't good enough anymore. Were they good at one time? Yes, but we are evolving as a species and as a society, so we have opportunities now to have a better understanding of the challenges that we face. So keeping that in mind, let's communicate the risks with our kids, communicate why we are thinking what we're thinking, why we're saying what we're saying, the science behind it, the fact, the emotion behind it. We can't be afraid to hold back on expressing emotion, because if we hold back on expressing our emotion, what do we think our teens are going to do? And then lastly, giving them that opportunity to come up with some of their own solutions in a healthy way. In active parenting, we talk about freedom within limits. And providing those limits is important, but giving that freedom for them to operate within the limits of the situation is going to prepare them to enter the society that is ready for them. We have limits in our society, but we have freedom. So if we raise kids with an expectation that here are your limits and this is what you do, they're going to struggle. If we raise kids and say, here's your free world, go do whatever you want, they're going to struggle. It's about showing them that we have freedom within the limits to be an individual, to express our emotions, to take risks in life, to withdraw from the world when it's a little too much in a healthy way, to belong to a group or to something that's bigger or better than ourselves. We can do that. It starts with having those conversations, and conversations go both ways, right? In order for one person to talk, another person needs to be listening. Otherwise, those words are just wasted. So as we have those conversations, make sure we're listening 75% of the time and talking 25% of the time. And I guarantee you'll learn a lot more about the young people you work with. That is all I have for you guys today. I hope that this provided a little bit of insight to you into the teen brain. I will be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar as well as resources that will go more in-depth into the teen brain so you can research it more on your own, as well as some different strategies that you can use to better communicate with your child. You can also go onto our website to find all of our resources. I will be uploading this webinar to our full archive of webinars. We will be taking a break, a summer break, so to speak, from webinars for a little bit. I know most of you are going to take some breaks out there too. So if you're looking for the next webinar, it's not going to be in the next couple of months because we are taking a little bit of a hiatus. On that note, I did want to share with you that have been, maybe whether you're a first-time viewer or you are or long-time viewers, I see a lot of familiar faces out there, a lot of familiar names, I should say, that have been tuning into the webinars faithfully for the past year since I've really started taking over some of the webinar content. And I want to let you guys know that this will be my last webinar here at DrugFreeAZKids.org, as I have accepted a position outside the organization. I will continue to be working with youth just now through the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Phoenix. So I'm really excited to be able to do that in that new chapter in my life. So many of you, I'm sure I'll see out there, whether you're a parent, you are one of our law enforcement partners, our community partners, our educators, teachers, whatever the case may be, I know I'm going to run into a lot of you out there. If you do want to contact me and get some more my personal contact information, you can reach out to me through the end of this week at these two contacts, whether it be my email or my phone number. Feel free to reach out to me and say, hey, what's your personal email? What's your phone number? I'm happy to send that out to you guys and provide you any type of assistance that I can in the future, point you in the right direction. I've had the opportunity to work with some great people here at DrugFreeAZKids.org and the other organizations here in Arizona as well as California, and I'm happy to share some of those resources with you. So as you watch any of the archived webinars, if an idea comes up, feel free to reach out to me. Just because I'm not going to be sitting in this office here doesn't mean that my heart isn't still in the mission of DrugFreeAZKids.org. I still look forward to working with all of you when the opportunity arises. On that note, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to put up a survey. If you have any questions, please put that in the chat box. In the survey box you'll see in the main screen, you could answer those few questions. That helps us provide information to our funders and make webinars even better for the next person who will be sitting in this seat. So take a few moments to do that. Also, thank you very much. I appreciate your kind words. If you guys have any questions, put those in the chat box as far as questions relating to this webinar, other webinars, anything that happens to be on your mind relating to teens, the brain, and anything else. Give you guys a few minutes to answer those questions. So if you have a question that pops up, I'll be monitoring that chat box for the next few minutes. And I do want to let you guys know, it looks like we're going out with a bang here. This is the most attended webinar that we've had in the past year that I've been here. We typically get around 20 to 30 participants in the webinar, and today it looks like we had a max of about 45 participants. So thank you guys so much for spreading the word and getting this out there. I will be sure to get out any information about future webinars, whether it be here or other places, to all of you that are our faithful webinar viewers, because I think the more knowledge we have, the better we are at doing our jobs, whether that's a parent, a caring adult, prevention specialist, law enforcement, teacher, or whatever the case may be. So look for all those resources about other webinars that you can continue to check out. So we do have a question here about active parenting and do we travel. We are actually waiting right now to hear back on our future funding opportunity from the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. Once they get back to us, we'll have a better idea of what the organization will be able to provide as far as active parenting workshops, one-time presentations, webinars, and so on. So that will be coming down within the next couple weeks, hopefully. And once we have a better idea of what services will be provided, we'll make sure to have any new programs or continuing programs posted to our website. So if you haven't signed up for our e-news, make sure to do that. We will be taking a break from the next couple of months from the e-news for summer as well. But go to our website, DrugFreeAZKids.org, sign up for the e-news, so that way you can stay tuned to any future developments or programs that we can bring you guys. Are there any other questions? Still see a few people left in the room. All right, and how do you get a copy of this? Great question, Victoria. I will be emailing this out probably either tomorrow or Friday, definitely by the end of the week, as Friday will be my last day here at the organization. But I'll be emailing this out. I'll also be emailing you our whole archive, which is all on YouTube, by the way. You can access that at any time. I've uploaded all the webinars and put them into a playlist. And I believe we have about 12 to 12, anywhere from 12 to 18 webinars, somewhere in between there. I've been doing the webinars for about the past year, but I also have our older webinars. So you'll be able to access all webinars on our website and on YouTube. So keep your eye out for those. All right. You are welcome, Clyde. Thank you for joining us today. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to let you guys go and go enjoy your lunch if you haven't had time to do that yet. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope to work with all of you in the future. Reach out to me with any of your questions, concerns, at those contacts below. Otherwise, I will see you guys when I see you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.